Hello there ladies and gents, how the devil are you? Andy here, and today I've come down to the Harts National Park to take a look at this, the Insta360 Ace Pro, thrust gleefully into my hands by Insta360 just recently. And I thought, what better place to test it than the beautiful forest hilly landscape of the Harts National Park. Although I've picked the worst spot in the world apparently, because I'm right next to a scrapyard and a timber yard and cars keep pulling up and it's really windy, so hopefully you can still hear something. Now the Ace Pro is Insta360's first foray into the action cam market. So far they've been best known for their 360 cameras, obviously the clue's in the name. I think they've done a pretty good job, to be honest. It feels really good in the hand. The format is very recognizable. We've got a little display screen on the front, square lens over here to the left, we've got shutter button on top, power button to the left, little hatch here where you put memory card, charge the camera up, and then on the other side, hatch that opens up to reveal a removable rechargeable battery. All pretty standard stuff. But where things get interesting with this camera is that as well as having an ordinary screen on the back, this ordinary screen also flips up to face the front. So you've got absolutely fantastic, full-size, front-facing selfie screen. I'll turn it on, there you go. You can see the very simple display on the front there just shows you how much is left of your memory card, battery charge, what mode you're in, and what resolution settings you've got. But if I start it, you can also see what a terrible choice I've made in terms of location. Absolutely awful. Sack the location scout. This screen is very, very convincing. It's really, really solid. Doesn't feel at all flimsy. It feels like it's going to be able to stand up to the rigors of being used on a bike. Not least, but I'm giving it my full-on vlog action. Duck face and all that. But anyway, I've not had the camera long, so that means I'm not going to be able to regale you with my deep and meaningful opinions about it. I'm also not going to baffle you with tech specs or marketing jargon. But what I am going to do is take the camera out on the bike, try out a few of the modes and settings, and give you a chance to see what the video looks like coming out of this little box of tricks when it's being used properly on a proper machine in a proper setting like this.
So this is the setting that I would probably use the most. This is 4K at 25 frames per second. The camera is pretty much on full auto, except a couple of tiny tweaks I've made. I've just reduced the stabilization from standard down to low, because I prefer the feel of a little bit of movement, make you feel like you're vibrating and having excitement on the bike with me. I've also reduced the sharpening from high to medium. It comes default high out of the box, and to my eyes that's a bit too sharp and unrealistic. So yeah, here we go, 4K at 25 frames per second, and the audio incidentally is also coming out of the camera through the mic adapter, which is plugged into the side. I have done a tiny little bit of jiggering with the audio, not much, just a little low cut and a little mid boost, but we'll come to that when we talk about the audio more specifically later on in the video. This is now probably what's going to be the next most popular setting, which is 4K at 50 frames per second. What I also forgot to mention on the first section, as in this one, is that the field of view is set to action, which is the widest view available on this camera. But of course, with the double frame rate, as well as giving much smoother footage because of those extra frames, it also means you can slow it down to half speed if you want. So yeah, that's 4K 50 frames per second. So now we're on 4K 120 frames per second, the highest frame rate available in the 4K setting, which in my opinion is probably a bit of overkill for helmet mounted stuff, because I don't think our eyes can see 120 frames per second. But what it does give us the ability to do is to slow the video right down. Beautiful slow-mo hairpin action. Of course, with everything, the caveat with 4K at 120 frames per second is that the field of view is reduced from action down to ultra, so the field of view is slightly cropped in when you go up to that maximum frame rate. This is now the setting that I would say is the sweet spot between image quality and file size. This is 2.7K at 25 frames per second, and if ever I'm doing a somewhat longer tour, multi-day, I'll pretty much always switch it down to 2.7K because it means I'm going to be able to get more out of my memory cards. I'm going to have less videos to back up over a long trip, while still attaining a really good image quality. So still in the widest field of view, action. And using this setting I've found in the past, it just means I've freed myself from needing to take a laptop or an iPad or any kind of computer on tour with me, and I can actually rely entirely upon a stack of memory cards. But yeah, this is 2.7K, 25 frames per second. So there we go, just like that, we're at 2.7K, 50 FPS, which gives us back the beautiful buttery smooth fluid looking video. It also gives us the ability to slow everything down to half speed. Speaking of slowing down to half speed, there's some traffic, but even when you're not allowed to overtake, you can just admire the sights a little bit. So you're now looking at 2.7K, 120 frames per second. That's the maximum FPS for this resolution. Just like in 4K, the field of view has been cropped in now from action down to ultra. So again, slight loss of field of view in order to get this FPS setting. So that means once again, buttery smooth video. Most importantly, deliciously slow slow-mo. The wind! Be lucky if you could hear anything. Anyway, this is the next step down. This is the resolution high school sweetheart of many a content creator, 1080p. And for many, still the bread and butter of most of their video production. Because at 1080p, you're still getting a full HD video, but you're barely using any of your memory space up. You can get absolutely days and days and days of video at this resolution. And the quality still stands up, I think. And this is, of course, as all the others have started, at 25 frames per second. And now we've stepped it up to 1080p 50, so that's double the standard frame rate, which again is giving us this lovely smooth, fluid motion, also providing us with the ability to slow things down by half. Still have a smooth looking video. And then finally, for the journey back up the hill, we come to the point where the lowest resolution meets the highest frame rate. This is 1080p at 240 frames per second, which means we can now slow down 30 frames per second project 8 times, and a 25 frames per second project we can slow down almost 10 times for some incredible slow motion center stripe action. Then the final step on the resolutions in completely the other direction is 8K. This camera has an 8K sensor. Now, just like all of the slow motion settings, when you go up to 8K, the field of view is cropped into ultra. For me personally, 8K is not a resolution that I'm going to use all that much, as the files are massive. There's processing them is very difficult. I'm just going to see if this guy needs a hand, and then we'll carry on. You okay?
Yeah, okay.
All good. Have a good one. Waiting for his buddy. But obviously the good thing about 8K video is that when you've recorded it, you can zoom in on the video 2 times and you've got at the end a 4K video that's zoomed in. That's pretty impressive. But anyway, that's enough of resolutions. Let's move on. But before I do that, I want to quickly talk about battery life. I did a quick test on the way up here, and I scroll through to the very first video. I started the camera as I was leaving Hamburg this morning. Video recorded non-stop for 1 hour, 40 minutes and 7 seconds. So that's already pretty impressive. The next thing is that I've been using the batteries in the camera, and then afterwards plugging them straight in this fast charging hub down here, which is connected to this 10,000 milliamp hour power delivery battery pack. And these batteries I've been charging as fast as I can use them. So I've literally been taking the dead battery out of there, sticking it in here, sticking a live one back in there, and by the time the battery is dead, the next one is already charged. So that's quite impressive. Okay, so next up I want to talk about colours. So far I've been shooting everything in the standard colour profile, and just to give you a solid frame of reference, we're back in 4K 25 FPS, once again in the standard colour profile here. Now the camera actually has lots of different colour profiles, but the ones that interest me are vivid, which we're in now, which obviously, as the name denotes, makes everything a bit more vivid, a bit more saturation, a little bit more contrast. For me personally, a little bit too much saturation and contrast. I prefer to shoot in the standard setting, but with video it's always about taste. If you think it looks good, then it looks good. For social media, this kind of pushed, hyper-real, hyper-colourful look is very in right now, isn't it? But yeah, that's vivid. The next one is flat, which, again, as the name tells you, the colours are a bit flat. There's way less saturation, there's way less contrast. This gives you the ability to do your colour grading yourself, add the amount of saturation you want, add the amount of contrast you want, whatever other kind of jiggery pokery you want to do. But because it's a flat colour profile, you get a little bit more dynamic range in the recorded video, which gives you more flexibility in post to do your own work. So you can make your video look something a bit like this. Yeah, so that's the flat colour profile. After that, there's a bunch of custom profiles like for biking, skiing, cycling, in the water, that kind of stuff. But in the last firmware update, they also added 2 Leica colour profiles. This is the first one, Leica Natural, which I actually really like the way it looks. You know, a bit of extra contrast, nice little coloured tinges to it that make it look a bit more like a film. I actually like it so much that I shot my entire Germany Tech Trail video in this colour profile, and I think it looks great. Probably particularly good for vast sweeping scenic shots like this. And then this finally is the Leica Vivid profile. So similar theme as the Leica Natural, but obviously with a bit more contrast, a bit more saturation, ultimately a bit more vivid. Probably mostly noticeable in the incredible redness of my Italian tank. Italians do love a bright red, don't they? So that's the Leica Vivid setting. And that's as much of the settings I'm going to show. All the other ones are just variations on a theme, but do let me know in the comments which one of the colour profiles you thought looked the best. Right, with colour profiles out of the way, let's move on to, I don't know, field of view? As luck should so have it, I'm now able to talk you through the various field of view options at the same time as showing you a cool function of the camera, because I've now got the camera in free-frame video mode. What this means is the camera is recording everything from the whole sensor. It's also storing all of the gyro data, and this allows me to go into the Insta360 Studio app or the app on the phone and choose which of the field of view options that I want to use. And furthermore, I can choose how much stabilization I wanted to use. So you can literally choose all of these options retrospectively after you've already shot the video. So you can go for the widest view, which is action. The next one down is ultra wide. And after that you've got D-warp. And then you get into the horizon lock options. But yeah, I think that's a pretty cool feature that you can go into your video afterwards and choose exactly what field of view you wanted. In fact, you can even also choose which aspect ratio you want. So you can have a square video, a 4:3, you can even go for a portrait video, all after you've already recorded it. This road is so rough, it makes me think maybe this is a good place to try a bit of stabilization testing.
For this section, I've got the camera mounted onto the engine bars of the bike using the heavy-duty clamp from Insta360, and first of all, the stabilization is completely turned off to give you an idea of just how shaky the video would look without any stabilization at all. Next up, we've got the stabilization turned to low, which means a tiny little crop in of the field of view, but as you can see, the video is much smoother. After that, we've got stabilization at standard. Again, a slight further crop in, but the video is even smoother still. Next up is high. This means, once again, you guessed it, a slight crop in of the picture and even smoother stabilization. Next up is Horizon Lock 45, which, as the name suggests, keeps the horizon locked with a camera rotation of up to 45 degrees. But as you can see, this does come with a pretty serious crop in of the field of view. And then last up, we've got Horizon Lock 360, which allows the camera to be rotated through a full 360 degrees, but the image stays completely horizontal.
Well, until now, I've been shooting everything in the standard colour profile, and to give you a frame of reference again, here I am back in the standard colour profile, and I know I said I wasn't going to geek you out with stats and technical stuff, but I'm going to have to just a tiny little bit, because this camera has a sensor which has quad-layer pixels in it. Now what this means is every pixel has 4 sub-pixels, and these sub-pixels can either act together as one pixel and create the image, or instead separate parts of that quad pixel can be used to expose the image differently and then be combined afterwards by the processor, and this allows us to create HDR images super quickly without any of the ghosting that used to happen before. So I'm going to quickly change the camera into HDR and you'll see what I'm talking about. So here we go, the camera now has active HDR turned on, which hopefully means that the images in the shadows here are going to be getting a bit more detail while still capturing the detail over in the bright bits over there. Should hopefully also feel better if I look straight at the sun rather than just blowing out like it would normally. Yeah, that's the active HDR feature turned on. Let me know what you think in the comments. Do you think the video looks better with the HDR turned on, or did you prefer it before in the standard flavour? I'm going to leave the HDR turned on for the rest of the video now. And also the stabilization is now on standard, so if you need a frame of reference for that, just spool the video back to the beginning, see how it looked then, and then you can compare against how it looks now. But next up, I want to talk to you about audio. Obviously so far I haven't done anything with the internal mics of the camera. To be honest, I haven't found an action camera yet that can give a convincing sound when it's mounted on the front of a helmet of a motorbike cracking along at 60 miles an hour. Whereas from what I've heard so far of the audio in helmet, it sounds pretty convincing, and this is just with the Insta360 mic adapter, and the camera deals with all of the gain control. There's no volume control in the settings whatsoever. You literally just plug it in and it goes. The microphone I'm using, it's just any old bog standard Amazon €15 microphone. As I said at the very beginning of the video, I have done some slight tinkering with the audio in this video because I do that within all of my videos. So to fully qualify that statement, this now is what the audio sounds like directly out of this camera with all of my tinkering taken away. This is what you get out of the camera if you can't be bothered to do any editing whatsoever. Obviously, your mileage may vary massively because it all depends on mic placement, type of helmet, the screen you've got, the speed you ride, how windy it is. There's so many variables. It literally is with microphones and motor vlogging. Suck it and see. Just keep trying until you find the sweet spot. This is what the audio sounds like, and what I've done to it is nothing crazy. Just stick on a low cut to take off the bassy, low rumbly bits, a little bit of a mid boost to increase the clarity, and then a tiny bit of compression just to raise the levels up. And that's how I get from audio that sounds like this straight out of the camera to audio that sounds like this after I've processed it.
Fast forward to the journey home, the time is about 9 o'clock, and despite the sun having already gone completely behind the horizon, there's still quite a lot to see in this video. Another half an hour later, and the camera is still doing a pretty solid job of giving us a watchable video. Even later still, it's after 10 o'clock, the sun has gone completely down, and to my naked eye there was barely any light left in the sky, yet the camera is doing really well at gathering light from I don't know where.
Coming into the city, we've got street lights, headlights, things that are illuminated in the foreground, shadowy stuff in the background, yet the camera, once again, is performing some kind of a voodoo to give us images that we can actually watch. And saving the best to last, the tower that you can see in the skyline there, to my naked eye, was almost completely invisible. I really had no idea if the camera was going to pick up anything at all, so it's pretty impressive that we can see that. But yeah, pretty much covered everything I wanted to cover. I mean, the camera does have masses of features and functions and modes, but it's all stuff which, to be completely honest, I wouldn't really use. I'm not really that interested in time lapses, in the AI warp feature, you know, all that kind of stuff. So I've basically only covered the stuff that I would actually use the camera for. There we go, there's a day's riding done with the Insta360 Ace Pro in the Hearts on the quite simply fantastic Aprilia Touareg. Pretty impressed with the camera, to be honest. It's worked flawlessly, not a single hiccup, no freezes, no crashes, everything has been absolutely brilliant and it's worked throughout the whole day without a problem. The battery life has been plenty good enough. I haven't had any problems with having to wait for batteries to charge. I've still got 6.5 hours of memory left on my 512GB memory card. And considering I've been stopping and starting and changing settings like a complete madman all day, it's actually been pretty smooth running. Big screen is nice and responsive, easy to change the settings. When mounting it to the bike, I could flip up the screen and check my framing nice and easily without having to get on my knees. But also, I've been using this all day. This is the little preview remote control that Insta360 also have available. This is obviously extra to the camera, but it is really, really good. You can change all the settings on it. The battery as well has been pretty impressive, and it has literally only just died in the last 20 minutes, and it is now 6 o'clock, and I started riding this morning at 9. But I've been able to change all of the settings that I can change on the back of the screen. In this, I can also check my framing, and I can see what's going on in the camera as it's happening. Really, really handy. And that's mounted on a little rubbery mounty clippy thing on the handlebars. And speaking of mounts, the magnetic mount system for these cameras is absolutely brilliant. It's so easy just to clip it on the helmet. When I've needed to take it off to change any settings or change a battery or whatever, clip it straight off. Haven't changed the view on the camera, and as soon as I'm finished, I'll plug it back on the helmet and know that my framing is still a-okay like it was before I started messing. I've had no issues at all either with the microphone adapter, which is dangling around on the front of my helmet there. Fits nice and firmly. There's no worries that that's going to pop out like the GoPro one used to. And if I wanted to, I could have also run the camera off a battery pack through the USB-C socket on the adapter there. Yeah, nearly killed the camera because of a mosquito. Right, the bugs are attacking. Let's wrap this up. Overall, really happy with this camera. Initially, I was a bit concerned about the size and the weight of this camera because it is both a bit bigger and a bit heavier than the DJI Action 4 that I currently use. But having ridden around with it mounted onto the front of my face all day today, as well as a couple of days ago riding for a full day doing a section of the German Tep with it mounted to the front of my face, I can say I didn't notice the extra weight, didn't notice the extra size. So yeah, I would say it's a contender. Will it replace the cameras I use already? Who knows, time will tell. Obviously, I can tell you how it was to use it, but I can't tell you what you think of the video, and that is the most important thing of all. If you think the video from this camera looks good, that means the video from this camera is good, and maybe that's the camera you should get. So please do let me know in the comments below what you thought of this camera, what you thought of the video samples, what you thought of the functions and the features that it has. And if you think I missed anything out, or if there's anything else you want to know, also ask me a question below. I'll do my very best to answer. Otherwise, thank you so very much for coming along. I hope this video has been entertaining. I hope it's been at least a little bit informative. And if you decide to get yourself one of these cameras, I would be endlessly grateful if you could do it through the link in the description below. No extra cost to you. You may even get a free accessory with your purchase, and I'll also get a tiny little kickback as a thanks from Insta360. And finally, huge thanks to Insta360 for providing this camera and all the accessories that came with it. I've been AndyManCam. This has been the Insta360 Ace Pro. You've been awesome for watching, and I'll see you next time. Ta-ra!